Well, hopefully this will be a quick video. People have been wanting to see the process of cutting foam. I have on my mat the paper size set at 4 inches wide by 6 inches long. That's the size these foam pieces come in. And so I have that on the mat. Here's a piece that I've already cut, but you can see it's just a 4 by 6 sheet. I have found this design amongst my September bundle in the Hungry JPEG, and I thought it would make a great little stamp for backgrounds and whatever, and the positive or the negative would be useful in my clay work as well. So I've got my settings. This is the second time I've done it because the last time I did some things that did not work. In fact, I'm trying to get a decent focus here, but on the laptop it just doesn't seem to want to. Anyway, I have it set for 3 speed and 33 thickness. I kept the double cut. The last time I did it, I did not. And the other thing I had done on the other one, which I wish I hadn't done this time, is this line segment overcut. I have that set to off. Last time I had it set to on, and I think that might be where I ran into some problems, particularly since they're not like square cuts. Oh, it's now finally starting to focus. And since this is a round series of round images, maybe that's what caused my problem. So now I'm getting ready to send it to the Silhouette again. I have another piece of foam on there. After all, they're very cheap. You get like 30 of them for $1. Pretty cheap. So I'm going to send it to the Silhouette, and over here we'll see how it's getting ready to cut. Hopefully it's cutting better. I've made sure I have my 60-degree blade in also. The last time I did not, and it is cutting a double cut. The only thing I hope it doesn't do is lift the bits off the mat because they're cut so nicely. You can see a couple of them want to pop. So I'm going to pause this as this goes through. I think 1 or 2 of them have left the mat, but I can easily replace them. Okay, this is the item as it has come out of the Cameo. I had to retrieve a couple of my small little bits and poke them back in. I think it's a problem of the static electricity that wants to make them jump and move out, particularly if they're really cut pretty good all the way through. So I had to retrieve some of these little bits and stick them back in. But that should not be a problem. The next thing I'm going to do is apply the tape. Okay, I have this piece on the mat, and I've put all the little holes back in there, and now I'm going to take some Scotch brand packing tape and put some tape on the side before I remove it from the mat. And the key is to cover all the little bits so that I can make one side a positive and one side a negative. The second piece of tape should slightly overlap the first so that the whole thing is covered with tape. And then I can remove it from the mat, which I'm going to do now carefully. Hopefully none of the bits will stick to the other side, and they didn't. So then I take a piece of tape and do the same thing with this side. Put tape on it, covering all of the bits and overlapping this side. Put tape on it, making sure all the bits are cut. Now I can remove this comfortably from the whole mat. I have packing tape on both sides. Perhaps you can see the shininess of the packing tape. So I'm going to pause for a minute, remove the mat. Okay, here's the piece again, and what I'm going to try to do is figure out which side to start on. It really doesn't matter. I just have to be consistent with what I'm doing. And so what I'm doing is removing the tape to get started. And it is very helpful to have some fingernails to do this. And the point I'm going to try to make is what you're trying to do is get these bits to stick. And when they won't stick, you can just help them along, like that one and this first one. Yep. And what I'm trying to do is get them in their proper alignment to how they were cut. Some of the smaller ones are a little tricky too, and sometimes they don't want to go. Now this one I cut a double cut. Some of them actually wanted to pop out while it was being cut. By the way, I've been thinking about how to avoid that, and I believe it's the static electricity that is formed, particularly with this foam, which has a lot of it. So I think if I had wiped it down with either baby powder, which is something I use a lot of, as you know, or maybe even a just slightly damp cloth, if I had a wet one, if I had just wiped the foam down, I could have reduced the static electricity that causes these bits to want to pop out. But as you can see, what I'm working on now is keeping each of these in their proper place and separating them. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. And this, of course, is the positive of the design, and this is the negative. The ones with the holes will be the negative. And I'm keeping the foam in its respective place. And this will be a stamp. The one on the left will be something I could use to stamp with, as I've shown in previous videos with the Misty. And then this one on the right hand side will be the negative, which I'll use to impress in clay and create a raised texture. The raised texture will really look like this side when I do that. But the point is you really have to help this along. It sometimes comes out really good. I did double cut, and that they seem to want to cut, maybe not perfectly, but close enough. Sometimes when I'm doing foam, like when I first started, I did so much of it, I actually had the process down perfectly. But since then, I've gone on to do some other things. And although I've made notes of my cut settings and what works, as you know, it's not always the same. Your hand will cramp up from doing this, as mine has done just now. I keep a good, strong, firm fingers applied to keep them together, and then get the ones that I want to move onto the left hand. Whoops, now that one probably didn't work as well. And you can just use your thumbnail to coax them into the proper places. Okay, well, it's working. And the foam is very forgiving. If it does scratch a little bit or indent a little bit, give it a little time and it goes back pretty much to its proper state. But I'm almost done here. Pulling it, peeling it, making the pieces go where they need to go. And I'm almost done. A couple little ones. Some of them want to go on their own after a while, if this works really well. And if there are there are a lot of little bits in this one, but if it were a whole piece, it would release rather well by itself. Okay, so now, like these have done right down here, see, they want to come onto that spot. So I think I have one more, and maybe this little one that's popped out. So now you can see what I have is the positive. These are all nice and stuck. And the negative. This will create raised dots and holes because I've got the tape on the back. You know, but the tape here is the one that's really critical. These pieces would be every which way. So now what I'm going to do before I do anything else is, add the powder. Okay, I have put some baby powder in this little container, and what I'm going to do now is get a little paintbrush, pick up some powder, and put it in. Now this is important for the clay. If I put powder in all of these dots over here on the negative side, then the tape does not stick to the clay. And the foam actually is a wonderful release. It doesn't stick at all. So I don't have to put any on the foam. I just don't want the clay bits, the open holes that have tape to not release from the clay when I use it. So that's done. And then this one here, it's important that I get the powder everywhere where the tape, because this one here, I don't want the tape to stick to the paper as I'm stamping. So that's the purpose of doing this, is when you apply ink to the dots, you don't want the tape, which is sticky, to stick to whatever it is you're stamping. So that's the purpose of putting this powder on. So I kind of hope you get the idea. Maybe I will create another quick little video. I'm not very good at doing this, but I think you get the idea. Maybe I'll even show you how this stamps. So what I do then is put the two pieces together, kind of spank them a little bit to get rid of any excess powder that I don't need. And now they're ready. This one's ready to be used for clay. This one's ready to be used to stamp. You could also stamp with this, because you'll be left with this part here would have all of the ink or paint, perhaps with something like a jelly plate. This would work. So that should do it.